The afternoon light was doing that thing it does in late October, coming in sideways through the bakery windows and turning everything gold. I remember noticing it because I thought, 41 years. 41 years I've watched that light move across these floors. I was standing at the back counter, going through the weekend order sheets, when my head baker, a quiet man named Felix, who'd been with me for 11 years, appeared in the doorway between the kitchen and the front. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there with flour on his forearms and a look on his face I'd never seen before. "Something wrong with the ovens?" I asked him. He shook his head slowly. Then he walked toward me, closer than he needed to, and when he spoke, he barely moved his lips. "Don't go upstairs yet," he said. "Give me 2 minutes. Go back to your car and wait." I almost laughed. Felix was not a man given to drama. In 11 years, he'd spoken maybe 400 words to me total. He came in, he baked, he left. His croissants were the best in the county, and that was all either of us needed to know about each other. But something in his face stopped me. I went back to my car. I sat there in the parking lot behind the building, watching the loading dock, watching nothing, feeling foolish. My phone said 2:14 in the afternoon. My general manager was supposedly upstairs in the office running through payroll. We had our 41st anniversary celebration in 3 days. A dinner for longtime customers, a spread in the local paper, my daughter and her husband coming in from Portland. I had 100 things to do, and I was sitting in a cold car because my head baker had whispered at me like we were in a spy movie. At 2:17, Felix appeared at the back door and waved me in. He didn't take me through the kitchen. He took me through the storage hallway, the one that runs behind the cold cases, narrow and dim and smelling of cardboard and cinnamon. He stopped outside the door to the stairwell and put one finger to his lips. Then he pointed up. I heard voices, 2 of them. One I recognized immediately. It was my general manager, a man I'd trusted with the keys to everything for 6 years. The other voice I didn't place at first, lower, careful. The way people talk when they're not sure who's listening. I stood very still. What I heard in that stairwell changed the course of everything. My name is not important. What matters is that I built Callaway's Bakery from nothing, in a town that didn't need another bakery and said so. I was 31 years old with $2,000, a commercial mixer I'd bought at a restaurant liquidation sale, and a lease on a building that had been a vacuum repair shop for 30 years. The walls still smelled like motor oil when I opened. My first customer bought a single blueberry muffin, took one bite and said, "Well, I suppose this'll do." That was high praise around here. I raised my daughter in that bakery. She did homework at the corner table. She learned to make change from the register before she learned long division in school. When she was 16, she could close out the books herself, and when she left for college, I cried for a week. Not because she was leaving home, but because I'd lose my best closing shift help, and I didn't know how to replace her. I never remarried after her father left. I thought about it occasionally, the way you think about repainting a room. The idea has appeal in the abstract, but you never quite get around to it. The bakery was my life. My daughter was my life. That was enough. When my daughter married 6 years ago, I liked her husband well enough. He was steady and kind, and he made her laugh, which is all I ever asked of anyone she brought home. They settled in Portland because his work was there, and I understood that, even when the distance felt like a small stone in my shoe, never quite painful enough to stop walking, always there. The hole my daughter left in the business was real. She had instincts about people I've never had. She could read a job applicant in 10 minutes and tell me things I wouldn't figure out until month 3. After she left, I made 2 bad hires in a row and swore I'd be more careful. Which is why I hired my general manager with such deliberateness. His name was Philip. I'll call him that, and he came to me with references that checked out. 6 years of experience managing a small grocery chain, and an interview so smooth it should have made me nervous. He had an answer for everything. He knew food service margins, he understood labor law, he could talk about customer retention with the kind of specificity that only comes from experience, or from having memorized exactly what business owners want to hear. I chose to believe it was experience. For the first year, he was genuinely good, organized, efficient. He caught a scheduling error that would have left us short-staffed on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and I remember thinking, finally, someone I can actually trust. I'd been doing the work of two people for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to let go of something and have it stay let go. By year 2, I'd given him signatory authority on the supplier accounts. By year 3, he was handling all vendor relationships directly. I told myself this was smart delegation. I was 62 years old. I had arthritis in my hands that made long days at the counter difficult. I wanted to focus on the parts of the business I loved. The recipes, the customer relationships, the small decisions that kept the place feeling like itself. I didn't want to think about invoices. I should have wanted to think about invoices. What I heard in that stairwell was this: Philip's voice, low and pleased. The equipment invoice clears Friday. Same account as last time. The other voice, which I now understood, was not a stranger but my produce supplier, a man I'd done business with for 9 years, said, "And the anniversary week order? Double the usual volume." She won't question it. She never looks at produce specifically, just the total. A pause. "You sure she's not going to do a full audit before the dinner?" Philip laughed. It was a short, easy laugh, the laugh of someone who has never been caught. "She trusts me completely. That's the whole point." I stood in that hallway with my back against the wall and my hands very still at my sides. I don't remember what I felt first. It wasn't rage. That came later. It wasn't grief, exactly, though there was something grief adjacent in it. The particular hurt of discovering that someone you've trusted was performing trustworthiness, not feeling it. What I felt first, I think, was clarity. The clean, cold clarity of a puzzle piece clicking into a place you didn't know was empty. I thought about the produce invoices I hadn't looked at. I thought about the equipment invoices I'd signed without reviewing line by line, because Philip always had a summary ready, and I was always tired. I thought about the supplier account I'd given him signing authority over. I thought, how long? I thought, how much? Felix was still beside me. I turned to look at him. He was watching me with the careful expression of a man who has been carrying something heavy for too long and is only now setting it down. "How long have you known?" I whispered. He held up 3 fingers. 3 months. He'd known for 3 months and hadn't told me. I filed that away to feel later. Right now, I needed to think. I touched his arm once, a thank you I didn't have words for, and walked back out to my car. I called my daughter from the parking lot. She answered on the second ring, which is how she always answers when it's me, as though she's been half expecting the call. "Mom, everything okay?" I told her everything, not calmly. I started calm, and then my voice did something I hadn't planned, and she had to wait for me to get it back under control. She didn't rush me. She didn't say, "Oh my God," 14 times, which is what most people would have done. She was quiet while I talked, and when I finished, she said, "Okay, don't confront him. Don't let him know you know. I'm looking at flights right now. You don't have to come. Mom." Her voice had that edge in it, the one she got as a teenager when she was done negotiating. "I'm looking at flights." Her husband answered in the background. I couldn't hear what he said, just the low sound of his voice, and she said something back to him. "He says to download all the financial records you can access before end of business today," she said. "Every invoice, every bank statement, everything tied to those supplier accounts. Don't do it from the office computer. Do you have your laptop with you?" I did. It was in my bag. I'd brought it to do anniversary prep work in the cafe across the street when the bakery got too loud. "Do it from there," she said. "Cafe, coffee shop, anywhere that isn't your building. Can you do that?" I was already walking toward the cafe. "I can do that," I said. My daughter arrived the next morning. Her husband came with her, and I hadn't asked him to, and I was more grateful for it than I knew how to say. He was an attorney. Contracts, not criminal. But it didn't matter because he knew people, and he knew how to read the documents. I'd printed out across the street the afternoon before. We sat at my kitchen table at 7 in the morning, and he went through everything with the quiet, methodical focus of someone who has been trained to find the thing that's wrong. It didn't take long. The fraud wasn't complicated. The best frauds usually aren't. Philip had set up a secondary payment channel through the produce supplier. The man I'd trusted for 9 years, who turned out to have a history I'd never thought to check. Inflated invoices came in, Philip approved them. The overpayment got split between them. He'd been doing it for at least 2 years. My son-in-law put a yellow sticky note on the month he believed it started, and I looked at it for a long time. That was a month I remembered as a good month. Good sales, good weather. I'd been happy. "How much?" I asked him. He looked at me with the steady expression of someone delivering a number they know is going to hurt. The number hurt. I sat with it for a moment. Then I said, "Okay, what do we do?" Not a question. A statement. Because at 63 years old, having built something for 41 years, and watched it nearly get hollowed out by a man who smiled at me every morning, the only thing I knew how to do was keep going. My daughter put her hand over mine on the table and didn't say anything. My son-in-law made phone calls. He knew a fraud attorney in the city, not a close colleague, but someone with a solid reputation, and had her on the phone by 9. She asked smart, fast questions and said she needed 48 hours to assess, but that what we'd described was prosecutable and recoverable, in her view. "Don't tip him off," she said. "Normal business as usual. Can you manage that?" I thought about what normal business as usual looked like. Philip would be in the office at 9. He would make coffee. He always made the office coffee, a gesture I'd found considerate and now understood differently. And he'd come downstairs around 10 to check in with me on anniversary prep. He'd probably ask if I'd reviewed the florist invoice. "Yes," I said. "I can manage that." What I did not tell her is that I wasn't entirely sure I could, because Philip had worked for me for 6 years, and I knew his habits and his patterns, and the particular way he tilted his head when he was pretending to listen. And the idea of standing next to him and pretending everything was fine made something in my chest feel like glass. But I had built this business for 41 years. I could manage 2 more days. The hardest part was the morning of the second day. My daughter and her husband had taken a hotel room nearby. My house is small, and I needed to be able to fall apart in private without witnesses, which is a thing I will not apologize for at my age. We checked in by phone every few hours. The fraud attorney was moving quickly. She'd contacted a forensic accountant and filed preliminary paperwork. She'd also, quietly, reached out to someone she knew at the county DA's office, not to file a complaint yet, but to establish context. "These things go faster when there's a paper trail already in place," she told me. "You gave us a very clean paper trail." I thought about my son-in-law at my kitchen table at 7 in the morning. Yellow sticky notes and highlighters spread everywhere, coffee going cold beside him. I thought about my daughter on the phone with the airline at midnight, rerouting their flight through a different hub to save 6 hours. I thought about the produce supplier who'd shaken my hand at my 10-year anniversary party and told me I made the best lemon tart he'd ever eaten. I thought about Felix, who'd known for 3 months, and had finally, on an October afternoon with sideways gold light coming through the windows, decided he couldn't hold it anymore. I'd had a hard conversation with Felix on day 1. He'd sat in the cafe across the street from the bakery with his hands folded on the table and told me why he'd waited. "I wasn't sure," he said. "The first time I saw the invoice, the produce invoice, with the number that looked wrong, I thought maybe I was reading it wrong. I'm not a business person." "You're not," I agreed. And then I saw it again, a different invoice. And I thought, he stopped, looked at the table. I thought, what if I tell her and I'm wrong? He's been here 6 years. She trusts him. What if I make this accusation and it's nothing, and I've put this idea in her head, and now she looks at him differently forever? I thought about that. "That's why you waited," I said. "And then I heard him on the phone," Felix said. "In his office. I was on the landing. I'd gone up to get a box of tissue from the supply closet, and his door wasn't quite closed. He was laughing. He said, "She has no idea. She signs whatever I put in front of her." We sat in silence. "I should have told you sooner," Felix said. "Yes," I said, "you should have." He nodded. He knew it. "But you told me," I said, "and that's what matters now." On the morning of the second day, I stood behind the counter at 6:30 and made the anniversary week specials myself. I made the lemon tarts from the recipe I'd been making since year 2. I made the almond croissants that had been on the menu since the beginning. I made the honey cake that had been my grandmother's recipe and was the reason I'd started this bakery in the first place. Philip came in at 9. He made the office coffee. He came downstairs at 10 and asked how the florist coordination was going. I told him fine. I told him we'd finalized the centerpieces and the garlands, and that my daughter was coming in from Portland for the event. "That's wonderful," he said. He smiled. "She must be proud of you." "She is," I said, "and I'm proud of her." I looked at him and I thought, you stole from me for 2 years and you are standing in my bakery smiling and telling me my daughter must be proud of me. I smiled back. "Big week," I said. "Big week," he agreed and went back upstairs. My daughter called it too. "The DA's office is moving," she said. "The attorney says they want to do it tomorrow. Before the anniversary. She thinks it's cleaner. You don't want this hanging over the celebration, and they don't want him to have a reason to leave town." "Tomorrow," I said. "Can you be there? I'll be wherever I need to be." She was quiet for a moment. "Mom," she said. "Are you okay?" I was standing in the back hallway, the narrow one that smelled of cardboard and cinnamon, where Felix had stood beside me 2 days ago and pointed up. "I'm angry," I said honestly, "and I'm tired, and I'm going to be okay." "Yes," she said, "you are." They came in the morning, 2 days before the anniversary dinner. I had been told they would arrive at 9 a.m. I stood behind the counter and I watched Philip walk in at 8:53 and go upstairs, and I thought, these are probably the last few minutes of the life he's built on top of mine. At 9:04, 2 men walked through the front door. They were polite. They didn't make a scene. One of them spoke quietly to me, confirming the name and the office location, and I told him yes. He thanked me. They went upstairs. I stood behind the counter and I made myself very busy with things that didn't need doing. I heard footsteps above me. Then voices, nothing I could make out. Then more footsteps, unhurried, coming down the stairs. I did not look up. I heard the front door open and close. I looked up. He was gone. The produce supplier was arrested the same afternoon at his warehouse across town. I didn't find that out until later. My son-in-law called me while I was closing down the display cases for the evening and told me, and I sat down on the stool by the register and held the phone in both hands and breathed. "It's done," he said. "It's done," I repeated. The anniversary dinner was 3 days later. My daughter sat at the table we'd set up near the window, the one that gets the afternoon light. And her husband was beside her, and the room was full of people who'd been eating my food for years, some of them for decades. The woman who'd bought the first blueberry muffin was there. She was 81 now, and she told the story herself. I said, "I suppose this'll do." And she laughed at her own understatement, and everyone laughed with her. Felix came. He stood near the kitchen door in a clean shirt and drank sparkling cider and did not say much, which was perfectly in character. When I passed him on my way back from the counter, I stopped and said, "Lo, just between us, thank you for what you did." He looked at the floor. He nodded once. I went back to my guests. Toward the end of the evening, my daughter found me in the hallway. The back hallway, as it happened, where this had all started, and she put her arms around me without saying anything. She's 6 inches shorter than me even now, the way she's always been, and she tucked her head under my chin the way she did when she was small. "I'm so glad you called me," she said. "You told me to," I said. "You used to tell me, 'Mom, if anything ever happens at the bakery, call me first.' You said it 100 times. And you actually listened." "Occasionally," I said, "when it counts." She laughed. It echoed a little in the narrow hallway. "I want to say something honest about what I learned, because I think it matters. I learned that trust without attention is just hope. I had hoped Philip was who he said he was, and I'd called that trust, and they're not the same thing. Trust that means something has to be built slowly, on evidence, on small verified things, over time. I'd given him access to too much too fast because I was tired, and because it felt good to let go, and because I wanted to believe I'd finally hired the right person. Those are human reasons. I don't beat myself up for them. But I see them clearly now. I also learned something about the people who stayed. Felix, who made the best croissants in the county and said almost nothing, and who carried a hard thing for 3 months because he wasn't sure, and then at the right moment put down the weight of it and handed it to me. He didn't do it perfectly. He waited too long, and he knows it. But he did it. My daughter, who answered on the second ring. My son-in-law, who showed up with his briefcase and his yellow, sticky notes, and his quiet competence, and never once made me feel like I should be ashamed of what had happened in my own business. I had spent 41 years building something. I thought the thing I'd built was a bakery. It turns out I'd also built a set of people who would stand up for it when it needed standing up for. That's worth more than I knew how to value. We replaced Philip with someone I found through my daughter's recommendation, a woman named... Actually, I've decided I'm not going to name anyone new just yet. She's been here 4 months. She's good. She asks questions before she makes decisions. She comes down from the office and walks the floor, which Philip never did after the first year. Small things. But I pay attention to small things now in a way I perhaps didn't before. The fraud case is still working its way through the legal system. I've been told I should expect to recover most of what was taken. Eventually. Eventually is a complicated word when you're 63, but I'm not in a hurry. I've been in this building for 41 years. I know how to wait for things. The lemon tarts are still the same recipe. The afternoon light still comes in sideways in October and turns everything gold. And every morning, Felix comes in through the back and starts the ovens, and the whole building fills up with the smell of something good being made. And I think, this is still mine. After everything, this is still mine. I kept the bakery, I kept the 41 years, and I kept the people who, when it mattered, kept me.